in this video we'll talk about testing molecules. So previously we looked at an example of building an app that displays a list of to-dos. The to-dos could be marked as completed. And we built a presenter for it. So the presenter looks something like this. The presenter took in a repository that we interacted with. And the models method, the logic it had was that it had a state holder for our view model. And then in launch effect, we interacted with our repository to get the data and to map it to a view model for each task. So how do we go about writing a test for this logic? So there's a library that you could use called Turbine. Turbine is a library for testing flows. So how do you use Turbine? So Turbine is a library which could take a flow like this. Suppose you have a flow that returns 1, 2. This library provides you with a test extension, and in there you could do assertions. So you could do assert equals, and then you could grab an item from the flow, like using the await item method. And then you could also make sure that the flow has completed, and by using the await complete method. So the way test extension works internally is that it basically calls a method called collect turbine in. So it begins to collect all emissions of the flow into a channel that you could read from. And the way collect turbine in works is that it declares a channel internally, and it launches a coroutine to collect everything inside of this channel, and it has a wrapper around it which exposes an API to be able to get items, to be able to know whether the flow completed. So the way channel turbine works is that it creates an unlimited buffer channel, and the API that you could use, one of the methods is called await item. There are also other methods you could use also. So the interface that's provided to you that you are using is called receive turbine, and receive turbine has all of the methods that you could use to query things from this channel. So basically these are some of the methods: await an event, await an error, await an item, etc. So since when you launch a molecule, since it returns a state flow, I could utilize this test extension method with it. So the way you go about doing this for our example is to first create a repository, a fake repository that we're going to inject into our presenter. And you could utilize Turbine. There's something called turbines that you could utilize to build this fake repository. You could send some fake data, fake tasks to it, and then you could pass it to your task list presenter. So suppose we want to write a simple test for the success case. So we're going to launch a molecule in our test and provide it called the models method in there. We're creating a coroutine using run blocking. So the launch molecule for tests, we're going to use the immediate frame clock. So which returns basically a flow, and I'm going to utilize the test extension on it. And then in there, just like I could use the Turbine APIs to be able to do testing. So when I call the test method, is going to start basically going through all the logic in my models method. We're going to create a state holder. We're going to launch basically a launch in effect. And then first we're going to return an empty state of loading. So this is what happens in the initial composition. So I'm going to await item and then verify that it's loading. Then after that, the models method will get called again. You could do an assertion at the actual data. So the other thing to note here is that your models method, you may want to handle some events, like for example completing a task, for example, or creating a task. And how do you go about testing these events? the way you could do that is that by creating a shared flow of events, for example, and passing that into your models method, and then what you could do is send an event to this shared flow, like for example add task, and that will kick off the logic in the models method, and then you could do an assertion on whatever should happen, whatever you expect to happen when that event is fired. So that's an example of utilizing Turbine to test your molecules. Thank you.